just continue iterating constantly and not let yourself be blocked from shipping. My way of thinking about it is just having a bias towards merging, a bias towards releasing, and continually updating.
We didn't want to say that it was React Native because we wanted people to feel that it's native app, and we didn't want to say that it's React Native app. And some people were shocked that it's React Native app, it's built with Expo.
There's this funny picture I think Fernando took of everyone standing around me, and I'm just trying to do some breakpoints in React Native core, figure out this issue.
I couldn't believe how many products I was reproducing it in. It felt like a collective embarrassment. And so it was really exciting to get to fix it.
React Universe on Air, your go-to podcast for all things cross-platform.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of React Universe on Air. We are here with three awesome guests. We have Fernando Rojo, head of mobile at Vercel. We have Szymon Rybczak and Oskar, two awesome developers. And we will tell you in a second why exactly we are all here together. Maybe Szymon, you want to say a few more sentences about yourself, like an introduction?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here today. My name is Szymon Rybczak, and I'm a senior React Native developer at Callstack. I've been doing open source R&D stuff here at Callstack for over 3 years. And yeah, happy to chat about V0 and open source stuff.
And so you did you showed a little bit of the secret that we're going to be talking about V0. Oskar, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Oskar kwaśniewski, and I'm also a senior React Native developer at Callstack. Yeah, and I've been also diving deep into open source, maintaining and creating libraries, and been also a part of this pretty awesome project, which is V0.
My guests are a little bit shy, I think, because Szymon, you didn't mention all your open source contributions. I'm really amazed about, I love the AI library that you built, React Native AI, that you can implant your own AI in a React Native app. Oskar is responsible for the bottom tabs that are on fire, and they are very loved. There are so many tweets about them. And Fernando, well, he was in charge of building the V0 app, which is really awesome. And this is the reason why the three of us are here together. So Fernando, do you want to give us an elevator pitch type thing of the V0 app?
Yes. So for those who aren't familiar, V0 is a website where you can vibe code. You can turn any idea, ChatGPT style, into a fully functioning full stack Next.js app. And you can preview it all in one place. And recently we built a mobile client for V0, which is a native iOS app that lets you chat with an agent and preview the website it builds side by side. And you can do this in tandem with the website. So if you're on V0 Web, you send off a prompt, then you leave your computer, you pick it up on your phone, you get notified, and you can keep working on it there. So if you have an idea, no matter how small or big, you can kick it off on V0 in the mobile app.
And I've tried it out. I played with it. It's really awesome. And I showed it to so many people. It's so V0 is really the core of our discussion today. But when we did our first introduction, I spoke with Szymon and Oskar, and they mentioned an approach that you have to building apps, which is iterate to greatness. And this is sort of like a leitmotif that I would love for this conversation. Could you tell us a little bit more about this approach?
Yeah, this is really one of the core things at Vercel that gets said over and over again, which is you want to just continue iterating constantly and not let yourself be blocked from shipping. My way of thinking about it is just having a bias towards merging, a bias towards releasing, and continually updating from there. So there are some cases where you really need to freeze something going live until it's right. It has to be fast enough, it has to work, the core functionality has to be there, and you can never ship something that doesn't feel good. But then there's this long tail of things that shouldn't block your current release. And that's where we want to just keep iterating until we reach greatness. And in many cases, you just are on this maze of trying to find something that's good. And so the only way to really get there is releasing things often.
Yeah, that sounds like very interesting approach to building a big product. And so this product that we were building was the mobile client. Oskar and Szymon were helping with it. Obviously, we can anticipate there was some app evolution. You started out with some idea, you started out with something, and then it turned out into something maybe a little bit different. So can we talk from the beginning how the mobile project started? Maybe Oskar and Szymon, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about the very beginning of the mobile project.
Yeah, like we've helped with our development. Like we were partnering to build this app. Like we've chose Expo as our solution for building apps, and many great libraries that we've later found many problems with, that we also partner with maintainers to fix them. One thing is that we were aiming for the best support for iOS 26 because like we are releasing the app when iOS 26 was pretty much live, and we were testing on all kind of beta iOS 26. So we found many bugs with keyboard, some bugs with styling solutions. We've chose React Native Union styles. So also like we're using beta releases of V3, found many bugs. Jacek, maintainer of Union styles, was very helpful, helped us fix a lot. And thanks to this, we have very fast styling solution. And yeah, like we've chose Expo. I think we're all happy with this solution. We're also using EAS, like all kinds of preview links, preview QR codes to iterate very fast.
Okay, so maybe to follow up a little bit, Oskar, can you tell me maybe like the decision that went behind choosing Expo for this product?
I think it was like really no-brainer to choose Expo. Honestly, for starting out a new project, it's honestly great. It's all you need for a new project. We also use like Expo modules for writing our custom code that we had there. We also had some modules that were written as a pure turbo modules, but like I think Expo modules are also great to quickly iterate on your native integrations. So yeah, we used pretty much all of the features of Expo, and like EAS and everything was working great.
And still is. The app is live. You can download it. You can try it out.
Still
It's
is.
working. Yeah.
Yeah, touching on the point that Szymon mentioned that we were like iterating on iOS 26. I think Fernando at what point mentioned that maybe we should make iOS 26 the minimum version, but I don't think we followed with that. So
we ended up setting iOS 18, but upgrading your version is free.
That's true. There's really no good reason not to do it. When you were starting out, the web application was already live, right, Fernando? The web app was first.
Yes, so the web app was first.
The web app was first. Was there any consideration about code sharing and strategies for that?
There was a lot of consideration around code sharing with the V0 website. It was complicated. We went with a Yarn monorepo because we had so many issues getting React Native to work in a monorepo, where we had a mixture of Expo modules, Turbo modules, eventually some Nitro modules, other custom packages. And just getting them to be imported into our project was like a whole project in and of itself, dealing with Metro and all this stuff. And there was this like really specific Yarn configuration that worked. Whereas the Vercel like core V0 repo is a PNPM monorepo. And it just didn't work to use both together at the same time. Eventually we figured this out, and it took some time, but that was like the initial difficulty was like, how much time are we going to sink into configuration issues? So what we did is we ended up sticking to like helper functions, types, API route stuff, things that were more like high level shared, but we didn't have like a single actual shared code. Now, I actually think this was a less of a consequence of the monorepo and more of the maturity of the project. I think it's much more common to share code if you're starting both at the same time because you have both in mind. Whereas the fact that the website was made so web first, you would have a lot of code that just would automatically break on native. And I think what you would need when you're building something like an app with Solido is you have kind of both platforms in mind from the start. So you build abstractions that work on both. And so given that, we decided to move more logic actually from the client to the server, which I think helped both performance and organization of the code base anyway. And then V0, the goal of the mobile app was for it to actually be a thin client around the backend API and actually reduce the need to share code in the first place. We just would offload more code to the server. And so by proxy, we were sharing code, but we weren't necessarily importing that code in the client. We were just receiving it as JSON from the backend.
That makes a lot of sense. As I've said, I did play around with the V0 app. I'd also played with the web app. And I have to say the interactions feel very native to both platforms. And they don't really transport. Like when you're on your iPhone, you expect like different sort of interaction than you expect on a website. So it makes sense for the front end to act different and not to expect for it to be like to be able to transplant it from one place to the other.
One goal here, like when we were developing the app, we at some point we didn't want to say that it was React Native because like we wanted like people to feel that it's native app, and we didn't want to say that it's React Native app. And some people were like shocked that it's React Native app. It's built with Expo. We've created some our custom third-party native modules to, for example, bring the input, bring some class effects, and still some people when they are playing with the app, they are shocked when they learn that it's React Native.
Do you think that some of the work that you did for Glass and all the keyboard inputs, do you think you're gonna open source it?
Yeah, it is open sourced in @Callstack/Liquid Glass. The package was like actually created specifically for V0 because we wanted to have glass effects, and like at the same time just released it to public. More people tested the code, so it was kind of a win-win situation. So yeah, it was released from this app.
That's an awesome development. Were there any other things that you were able to give to open source after working on them for V0?
Yes, actually page review, rewrite. So we use the like built-in currently released page review inside of the app, but we are relying heavily on like swipe gestures because the whole experience is like you have 3 kind of pages. First one is the chat, then is on the left is the chat list, and then on the right is the preview. And we are doing some interpolation based on how far you scroll. Current version of page review has a lot of issues with interpolation based on the progress of scroll. So we actually rewrote whole React Native page review in Swift UI. So like it works way better. And this version is actually released on the alpha tag on NPM. And for anyone who's watching us, if it's still on alpha tag, please test it. Because I just released, I think 2 days ago or last Friday, a new iteration, new version to get it finally shipped to stable. So we are now, I would say, at the last stretch of testing it, and we should be able to merge to main soon. So yeah, this was also like specifically rewrote for the V0 app, as we saw a lot of issues with the current implementation, and should be soon available to everyone.
Oh, that's pretty great. That for me, it feels also like another example of iterate to greatness, because you have a problem, you solve it for the app, and then you give it to people, and then they continue, like it's an open source, so they continue making it better and better and testing it out. So that's pretty great. Anything else come to mind, Szymon or Fernando?
A big part of building this product was constant roadblocks of little things that felt a bit off in React Native. And at each step of the way, we would try to solve it in a way that could just work outside of our app. So one of the big parts of like working with Szymon and Oskar on this was just upstreaming things into React Native core. So we actually patched React Native a number of times and got that upstreamed. Of course, we would like report bugs to Unistyles and a number of other things of that sort. Another piece that's probably the holy grail of all this is the chat itself. I am actually like working actively on open sourcing the internals of. It's quite challenging. I've already pulled out all the chat logic into an NPM package, but it isn't released quite yet. And I'm trying to get it to an alpha release. But the issue is a lot of it depends on V0 specific logic. And so getting it working in a standalone app isn't quite there yet, but I'm close. And what we really want to do is take all these findings. Like our goal from the start was build a really ambitious product regardless of the stack. So we experiment a lot with Swift UI, with UIKit, with different sort of starting points, and laid it on, let's try to do this with React Native, but only focus on one platform to start and go low level whenever we need. And so we ended up writing a lot of native code, and little by little, I want to open source all these things we've solved Because in my head, whenever you get low level enough, it just does not belong in app code. Like app code is meant to be kind of elegant, simple, clean. And most of these either hacks or confusing things that you're kind of scared to touch or anything like that, to me, that belongs in a versioned, consistent, reproducible library. And so I want to continue pulling these things out. One example is we forked the native module to make pasting work. So if you paste an image in your input or a file or something like that, it'll work in V0. There's actually no way to do that by default in React Native. It wasn't easy to extend the text input. So we made that. I want to open source that. There are a number of things like that we plan to open source. But in the meantime, the things we did were actually upstreaming fixes into React Native core directly.
Okay. And you mentioned that you made a conscious decision to start with iOS. Do you have plans to have an Android version as well?
No immediate plans to do Android, but we do want to do Android, certainly. I think there are continuous changes I want to make to iOS where once we make them and once we feel like we have really nailed every single part of it, that then I will feel good giving more attention to Android and building it. But when we do Android, I want to make sure that we can really dedicate, the time to polish it. And given my experience, I know that going straight from iOS to Android is not that easy. There are many little weird things from the keyboard to performance. There's a laundry list. And my big worry with building a React Native app cross-platform from start generally, and this is a trade-off, it's more of like a philosophical and then technical one, is just lowering the common denominator of the two apps in order to meet one. So one example is Android doesn't have a content inset property on the scroll view, in React Native at least. I think actually in Kotlin, you can basically do the same thing, but React Native doesn't have that exposed. And that's how our entire chat keyboard scrolling padding logic is built. So, you could probably use a margin and just platform check it on Android, but I think by sticking with iOS to start, we have no issue doing something that doesn't work on Android for now. We just need to focus on one platform. And iOS 18, 26, those are already two platforms in and of themselves. And we're even looking at supporting Mac right now, given the iOS build. So There's plenty to do, and I think it's really important to stay focused.
I found it striking that you said that you have like a list of things that you want to do, and then you're going to move on to Android. It feels like for you, it's a finite list. It's not infinite, because for me, very often when you're trying to fix something, make it better, make it perfect, the list is infinite. Like you always try to make it better. So when is the moment where you make the decision that it's good enough?
Well, there are two kinds of problems that we have to fix. One is feature completeness, which in most cases, the code actually could 100% be shared. Like the ability to send a message and retry something. The same button is going to work on both platforms. The JS thread's going to be the same. What's not going to be the same is the UI, the modals, the dragging experience, the keyboard handling, and all those things need to be good enough and like really feel exceptional on iOS before I can consider doing Android. Whereas the feature completeness thing, we can be missing some API route on the back end and then we implement it, but there's no back end feature that's stopping us from building Android because those are going to be the same across both platforms. So it's a focus on the UI and how it feels in your hands. That's the part that I want to continually iterate on and get to a really perfect state. So we focus on Android.
Okay. That makes sense. We spoke a little bit about all the contributions that came out of the app, and then you outsourced. We spoke about this before, and you made some notes, and you mentioned, for example, Szymon and Oskar, you mentioned fixing modal flickering, for example, and you mentioned that there may be an anecdote in there.
Yes, this was one of the fun ones to open source. This had been killing me about React Native for years. If you open any, I remember we opened a lot of popular apps and were able to reproduce this issue in all of them, which is you open a form sheet modal, the one that kind of has the cutout at the top with some space, and it makes the view behind it kind of scale down. And if you fling it up a little bit, that causes the height inside of the modal to increase and then immediately decrease. So it's kind of doing like a fling up and fling down animation. And what you'll see is the bottom of the screen, any content that is fixed at the bottom of the modal will like flicker up and down. So it's very, very jarring. And the cause was the fact that Yoga doesn't use synchronous updates. So you would fling the modal upward, and Yoga on each frame that it's going up and down is like basically adding to a queue of updates or some sort of batch that it's going to run later. I forget the exact implementation, but it's like debalancing or something to that effect. I believe it was some sort of queued plan. And every React Native app, you would fling the modal up a little bit or you'd expand it, and the bottom of the modal would just be jumping. And it just felt so bad. And there was some open issue about it forever. And so we just decided to dig in. And when we were at App.js, Oskar and I were basically running around with Oskar's laptop, asking help from the software mention team, asking help from people from Expo. Everyone was kind of contributing to being like, what might this be, right? So we were like looking at like C++, standing at a table, trying to figure out like, how do you make these updates be synchronous? Along the way, Oskar's trying to figure out like how Reanimated actually works if you made it from scratch, so we can kind of really dive into this and fix it. And Oskar can probably fill in the gaps, but if I recall correctly, there was some feature flag for synchronous updates, which first of all was disabled, and second of all wasn't even implemented in Yoga. So it wasn't added properly. And so what we had to do was one, enable it, and two, actually implement it. And so we then also got help from Nishan from Expo, who helped us upstream this into React Native Core. And finally, we got that one fixed. It was, it had been killing me for so long. And the reason it really stood out for V0 was because we originally made a custom modal in native code. And so we had our own sort of bottom sheet, and and it was floating. So as you would drag it down, the whole thing was jumping up and down like crazy.
Oh, okay.
And it was just totally unacceptable. And I couldn't believe how many products I was reproducing it in. It felt like a collective embarrassment. And so it was really exciting to get to fix it. It's upstreamed. I think it's React Native 82 has the fix now. So that's one of the multiple modal fixes that we got to get into core.
Okay, so it was a collective embarrassment, but the fix was also collective. You mentioned Expo, Software mentioned Callstack, Vercel. You were all working together.
There's this funny picture I think Fernando took of like everyone standing around me, and I'm just trying to do some breakpoints in React Native Core to figure out this issue. So yeah, we got the root cause found at app.js. And I actually also was asking people how to implement Reanimated from scratch so I can understand how it works, how the shadow tree propagates, because we were thinking that it's an issue if Reanimated, where we were hitting basically a lot of issues with shadow tree updates. And it's also like now from the point we were back then, Reanimated is also now improved, and it has so many optimizations now in place for the shadow tree updates. But yeah, I got like a really, really bad version of Reanimated implemented on app.js, and also this bug fixed. So yeah, I would say it was a great conference for...
You're listening to React Universe on Air, your go-to podcast for all things cross-platform with React and React Native.
So it's not an everyday task for a React Native dev to be working with Yoga internals, and even React Native Core. We don't, like day-to-day jobs, we don't really touch it. Was that something that happened fairly often while building V0 app? Szymon, maybe you want to tell us.
Yeah, there were many gotchas with the libraries. I think we didn't mention keyboard, like the React Native keyboard controller from Kirill. As I mentioned, like in the beginning, we were targeting iOS 26 from day zero. And keyboard controlling in React Native is always some kind of pain. React Native keyboard controller made it much easier, although like there were some bugs. For example, one bug was that keyboard was like input was animating like, I don't know, few 100 milliseconds faster than keyboard. So this was this bug that we could also repro in very popular apps, even built natively, because Apple had some kind of timeout. And together with Kirill, like we've tried to fix it. Kirill upstreamed the issue, and we were constantly using the latest version to battle test it. But yeah, like we were using always like the latest versions, always like the beta alpha releases of everything. So
really living on the edge.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that of course had some pros and cons, but But yeah, like when we were releasing the app, we felt like everything was really stable. And
yeah, I think adding to that, because you asked about React Native Core, and I think like the way we like to work in this team is that when we find a bug, we want to like go deep and like actually understand what's causing this. So when you find some bug, you might actually try to hack around it, do some like JS based solution to maybe mitigate the issue. But what we try to do is actually like find the root cause inside, even if it's inside React Native Core, go deep inside React Native Core, identify what's the cause, and then fix it. We were like first patching this in like Yarn patch, and then upstreaming the fix after like few versions that we've tested it. So I think that's why we've got so many like improvements to React Native Core from this project, because we were actually like working in this way to identify the core issue before trying to hack around the solution instead of finding the actual one.
Yeah. So that sounds like a dream job, that you can fall into the rabbit hole and try to look for the core of the issue. You're not bogged down by very tight deadlines, maybe. So is that something, since Fernando, you're the head of mobile, you're in charge of this, is this something that you have decided to let the developers follow and find the root cause and take the time to find it? Because obviously writing a quick fix, a hack, is going to be faster than tracing down a root cause in yoga.
Yeah, I think you just have to be able to do all the things. Like you have to both hit the deadline and find the root cause. And
so that's why it's Oskar and Szymon on your team. These are like the two guys who can do it.
At the end of the day, you're going to spend the time later with another fix and another patch and another hack. And you just can't, like, I can't step away from the computer being like, okay, we'll just do it like that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, it's, we had so many, we would hit these things that would just feel very, very obviously wrong. And I think what's important in the context of the V0 project is, from the start, it was not like we're a JS, this is all JavaScript, and like we're just React Native. It's like, no, we're going to use React Native and we're going to use other stuff. Like, we have one example of the audio module we were using was like an open source library we found for speech to text for our composer. And we noticed a bottleneck that when you would press to start recording, it would like take 1 second. And it just like, it kind of felt off. And so we just remade it, right? We just made a different audio module in UI, in like Swift UI, or I guess it was UIKit and then Swift UI for the waveform animation, because it had really nice haptics. And I'm sure there would be some way to like, you know, mix together a bunch of React Native stuff, or like open an issue with the maintainer, do 100 things. But sometimes it's just so much easier and better to just do it yourself and just fork it, copy it, clone it, make your own, something to that effect, open source it. And yeah, we just had to dig into like a lot of these native issues and also just write our own stuff. And I think there should be no chip on your shoulder to ensure that everything is like JS only or something like that. Like, I think that era is behind us. I wrote an article a year or two ago about how like this is my biggest issue generally with React Native. I think it's a relic of the past, but it sticks around. And just now, like the secret is that I have right now is I've actually been experimenting with rewriting all of the chat logic in Swift, and then seeing if I can get it working the same way as V0. It's been kind of like my weekend project. So all that to say, I think most teams, for React Native survival, most teams should not be doing what we did. I think it's not necessarily the best strategy, because we had to do a lot of like C++, but for the native, like just Swift stuff, that should definitely be in play, especially with stuff like Cloud Code now. Like, you know, it's all quite doable. So, you know, I would hope that other teams don't have to dig as deep as we did, but from the start, we just said, you know, we'll do whatever it takes.
I have to say that the UI of the app is super minimalistic. So it also makes sense if you only have like, you have these few interactions, you want them to be really perfect. There are many other apps that have like 100 components on the screen, and they sort of kind of work, and everybody uses them differently. And that's a very different experience from the V0 app, which is just basically an input field, and then you interact with it.
it's easier, but also harder. It's to make it very minimal is actually the hard part. I would argue to delete, to know where the one button goes or the other button. Like that was really, that was something we were very insistent on. And then I was like very, very big on is like just fewer buttons, fewer pixels. You have to like really earn your place on the screen. And so, yes, I agree. Like it gives you the flexibility to really care about every interaction. And that's very important. But it's strangely it was in many ways the most challenging part was just making it very simple. Like we started with a completely different UI that wasn't this 3-pane swiping. It was actually a Safari style grid where you would tap it and we would do a shared element transition to expand it. Like we tried a lot of different stuff in pursuit, and we ended up with this thing that was 10 times simpler, right? And it sounds kind of easy, but it's I don't know. So that was kind of the interesting part of all this is that the iteration to this point, requires a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely. Somewhere in there, somebody mentioned the composer, and I also know from our previous meetings that there was something called the floating composer, and it was a concept, and it was later dropped. So I'm curious also about the place of like when you're building something and then you have to drop it. Who wants to start? Maybe Oskar. Do you want to explain what a floating composer was?
Sure. So it was kind of like this idea of we have like a floating text input at the bottom, and the whole chat is kind of contained inside of this text input. So you could expand the text input and have the chat inside. And the WebView, the website that V0 is generating was at the behind. We experimented with many different layouts of where the floating composer would go. It was kind of like docking at the bottom. Then you could expand it, and you could expand it even more. Because our point at that time was that the chat is not actually that important. It's the result that's most important.
So when you're saying we were experimenting, how would the experiment go? You would build a POC and then it would go somewhere to be tested, or was it inside the team?
It was mostly inside of the team. I think we didn't do test flights at this stage, but yeah, we were iterating on this idea of floating composer, test it. Everyone was kind of like trying it out, feel it in hand. And then we decided to maybe switch the approach.
You really need to be okay deleting your work. I think that this is an important thing when you're in pursuit of making something good is you can sink a lot of time into something. There's a lot that everything's telling you to delete this on cost, but you just have to, be down to scrap it. I rewrote the entire thing. And that was just it. I did this, I think it was like a 8,000 line PR, and then I split it up into like 15 sub PRs so that we would be able to actually merge it and not be scared to break everything. Okay. But, that's just how it goes sometimes. And
how do you personally wrap your head around the fact that something that you worked on really hard is not going to be used?
It just, I don't know. It's just felt obvious to me when I would show it to someone. They'd be like, it really looks really good, but like, how do I, like I would hear someone be like, how do I get to my chats?
Okay.
And I was like, this is,
this is not working.
This will leave me up. This will, keep me up at night. And then we just started over. You just have to be, I don't know, you have to be very willing to start over, I guess. At least that's the lesson from this. I mean, in some other cases, maybe you need to stick with it. But I think it really panned out very well here. And we ended up with something that was much more simple and intuitive.
Szymon, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. And one really simple thing that we've used here were feature flags. And we really played with them. Like at the point where we had like floating composer, then we had like messenger kind of UI, then we had the pager view. Like we had a lot of feature flags, and they really helped us because when we were like playing with the app in the physical device and like showing up to friends, we really could like see the difference, how they use it between different UIs. And yeah, here's another like very, very important advice. Like please test it on the physical devices. Like testing on simulator is very cool. But yeah, testing on physical devices and on real iPhone devices is really important.
And what was your setup for feature flags?
Like we didn't use any third-party library. Like we were just using feature flags for development. It was like pretty much simple context provider, I believe.
To start, we just had local flags because these were all simply development based for the internal team. And yeah, the flags were very key because it gives you some level of freedom to merge. And then, you're not necessarily breaking everything. It comes with a downside because you need to kind of maintain two entirely separate apps. That's what happened at the time. But now we actually have a very robust flag setup where we actually are using Vercel flags in the mobile app. So we can actually control the UI's flags remotely. And we have a pretty cool setup for it that I plan on writing about at some point, where basically we, at build time, generate a JSON of all of our flags so that we know what their default state should be.
Oh,
and then
nice.
when the app focuses, we actually query those flags. And as the result of those queries, we actually cache the result of those queries on the disk. So we save those to MMKV. And so the next time you reopen the app, it basically first checks the network, falls back to the MMKV cache. And if that doesn't exist, it falls back to the build time cache. And the reason you want to have that cache, the reason that's very important to at least have the build time one, is to ensure that if things ever go wrong, right? If for whatever reason, your availability is low or your flags can't access, your network is out, that your defaults are totally off, right? So you want to make sure that they're actually sensible, and especially as you're over the air updating often or building often, that they work. And so that flag setup has been very great.
That's very smart. Yeah, I like the JSON dump of the default values as well, because sometimes I've seen projects where feature flags are not very discoverable, and you have new developers coming into projects and they have a hard time figuring out how to turn something on. So that sounds good to centralize that. So we talked a bit about the UI. It's minimalistic, but it's very well thought out. It has great animations and interactions and haptic feedback and everything, all the bells and whistles. You mentioned page review already, but you also worked on WebView swiping.
Yes. Oh, man. Yeah, this one was brutal. So if it's hard when I'm not demoing the app, but if you open V0, especially it's important if you're just listening, if you open V0's mobile app, there are 3 tabs which you can swipe side to side between. And the rightmost tab is the preview of the web view. You can think of it just like Safari iOS. So you see the web view, and at the bottom, there's like a Chrome with some actions. And there's this issue where you can swipe between the tabs, but if you're dragging your finger on the website, we actually had to block your swiping. And the reason is because you might be trying to go back within the web view. And that's a problem. And so we use React Native Gesture Handler to actually detect the gestures and conditionally block them. So what we decided to do was, if you have history within the website, meaning like you can actually swipe to go back, then swiping will block the gesture. So if you're looking at the website and you try to drag back to the chat by dragging your finger on top of the website, it won't work. And so that was quite frustrating for people because they'd be like, why is it not working?
Yeah.
So what we did is we actually listen using gesture handlers. I think it's a pan gesture. We listen to see if you swiped. And if you have, we actually show you a little animation telling you can swipe at the bottom. So there's a mixture of a lot of different stuff we had to try for this. Now, actually, if you open the app, there's actually a setting which lets you toggle on and off the swiping. So we've really nailed it, but it took quite a long time. So the reason you might disable the swiping for gestures is if you're actually using a website in the preview that has gestures itself. So in one test case we had was like a 3D cube. You can swipe around and you can make it rotate. And in that case, swiping would actually make you go back to the chat at the same time that you're rotating your cube.
Yeah.
So that's why we added the setting that would let you actually disable it. But for all other cases, we kind of auto-magically catch it.
Yeah, I think it's also important to mention how big of a role WebView plays here, because it's really like the key of the experience, the way you interact with the website. So we actually made a fork of React Native WebView, just like for Vercel, to kind of like quickly iterate on the features that WebView has. So like currently getting something into React Native WebView is not impossible, but it takes a while. So we decided to go quicker and kind of do our own fork of WebView. And this allowed us, for example, which was a really big thing, to make the preview look like Safari, with all of the insets and the handling of the safe area color at the bottom, at the top, where your notch is. So yeah, all of this was made possible thanks to this fork, and we kind of like could, instead of patching, we decided to actually like go with the fork route and release it in our internal kind of NPM. But you can also, I think it's also possible to upstream those fixes at one point.
We'll be waiting. We'll be watching your GitHub. Yeah, Szymon, you want to add something?
Yeah, there were many small details regarding the WebView preview. Like one of them was the header color, and between like iOS 18 and iOS 26, on some websites, on some tags, there were some differences. And we really spent a really good amount of time to always ensure when user opens the website on Safari, it looks the same. So the deployed version, after user published the generated V0 chat, looks one-to-one the same. And yeah, like we spent really very good time on this small detail. Probably some users won't never notice it, but yeah, it's really a detail that makes the whole experience the same as on web, on the real browser.
I think the case here is that when the details are present, we don't notice them, but when they're gone, when they're not there, that's when it's jarring, and then like you look at the page and you think something's off, it's not working. I have an anecdote actually about the header color, because I showed the app to my husband. He owns a software house, and he started playing around with the app, and he says, okay, build me this, build me that. And then he said to the V0 app, change the header color for me. And I was sitting next to him, and he was like sitting with his phone, and he said, yeah, my developers worked on this task for like 2 days. Let's see how long it takes, this AI thing. And of course, in 5 minutes, it was done. And the header color was as expected. And he was really shocked. He was shocked at how well the chat works to actually understand the ask, right? Because when you're asking when you have a website in mind, it's not like plain English. You're saying like, I want the header, I want this to a parallax effect or something. Did you train the model, or maybe it's the same model probably as the website, right? So it's a model that's specialized in websites.
Yeah, that's right. It's a composite model that's very tailored to building Next.js websites. We do have some specific prompting if you're on a mobile device that you see to ensure that there's like some additional mobile touches. But overall, we are actually sharing the exact same backend as V0. And that the process of actually building that backend, which is to say V0 was originally built just for the web app. So it was all basically server actions and React server components. And so when we want to expose that to the mobile app, we basically expose those functions via an organized API. And we made sure that API was all powered by Zod types for the input and output.
Oh,
so that we could, so that way we could actually code gen the OpenAPI spec. So there's an OpenAPI JSON file, and the mobile app actually takes that OpenAPI spec and turns it into a set of helper functions to use with Callstack query. So that's kind of how we connected to the V0 backend, but we are actually sharing all the internals. Funny enough, that experience actually turned into a product where we built an API for the mobile app to use, but then we just turned it into the V0 platform API, which is a really cool way for anyone to actually build their own V0. You can just get an API key or let users sign in with Vercel. That part's coming soon. And you can actually send a message programmatically to V0, and it'll return back to you a hosted URL, which you can either preview or deploy, also programmatically. And this is very nice. We've got a lot of customers who are actually, maybe they want to handle the sandboxing and the dependencies and all the millions of things that go into taking the actual output from the AI and the prompting and all that and put it into a real site. You can simply do that with the V0 platform API. But in the process of doing all this, I mean, we patched and forked everything we used, because sure, we want to upstream stuff, but at the end of the day, we've got deadlines and we need to make sure this is done right now. We can upstream later. We don't want to bother everyone with our bespoke requests. Actually, really a pretty good one. I mean, this is, if I had to summarize like what our patches folder looks like, it's something like this, like the meme with like the really long kind of fill out thing.
Okay.
Yeah, this one right here.
Oh, this one.
This is what our patches folder looks like.
Okay. So for everybody who is only listening, Fernando just showed us an image of like a ridiculously long phone with a ridiculously long list. We can hope that in the future, a lot of those batches will still like end up in open source, maybe in some sort of product. That's a great contribution from you. I, as a React Native developer, I'm very happy with that. So we spoke about the road that you took from figuring out that you want to have this product. You had some difficult problems to solve on the way, and then you got the app. You're ready to release, to launch it. How was the launch experience? Was there any surprises there when you were launching the app?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult to get approved the first time. Eventually, we managed to, and now it's smooth sailing every time.
How so? What happened the first time?
I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about the overlords, so I won't get too into the details.
Fine.
But
yeah,
let's just say, like, we didn't have our in-app payments set up, so we had to actually set a lot of that up. We had to actually remove our credits from the app until we built in-app purchases using Apple's payment rails. So we do have that now.
Okay.
But yeah, there was a lot to deal with there.
And after the launch, there's been blog posts, and everybody can also read the blog posts on the app. I want to touch upon a few security issues because I did play around with the app. I built some sort of I don't remember, but I used Supabase. The app suggested that I need a database, so the process was very easy to just like click, do the Supabase. But then the next day I got an email from Supabase saying, hey, your setup is not safe. So I feel that this is something that might happen to people. Do you have a plan for making sure the apps are secure? Do you feel it's Vercel's responsibility that the apps built here are secure?
Yeah, we definitely want to. First of all, we're like talking to and partnering with all these sort of providers to ensure that anything we expose via their integration is as secure as we can make it. The nice thing about how this works is we actually get to take advantage of the marketplace that Vercel has for something like a Supabase or Neon integration. And so you actually auth through your Vercel account, and you can set up like a Supabase database without necessarily even signing up for Supabase. We'll just provision it on your behalf via your Vercel account. But we're actually like, I would say security is probably the number one focus of V0 right now. And we really want to be the secure platform for vibe coding because the reality is like, this is, we have a totally new developer in the stack right now. And it's not a person who's necessarily aware of every little thing you need to do. And I think the benefit of having Vercel as the deployment step of your V0 app is you can just take advantage of all the security features that Vercel is baking into its deployments and into its websites for everyone. And so that's the first step, is just making sure that the thing you actually ship is secure. The other thing is ensuring that you're not leaking keys or anything like that. Like we, of course, scan for that on your behalf, even in your vibe-coded app. But we're going to and are continually doing much more to ensure that there could be like a security layer on top of your agent-generated code.
Okay, so you do feel that it is your responsibility. It's not something that you're just giving in the hands of people and you just do whatever you want. I think that's reassuring to hear, for me at least. I don't know if there's anything. I'm still thinking about this iterate to greatness feeling that and the approach that you have to building the app. If there's maybe anything else, Oskar, Szymon, that you feel that you would like to add on the topic. How for you? How was it working in this approach? Was it new for you to work like that?
Yeah, like after working for some time, like we got used to this approach, to this ITG approach. For the first time when I saw this emoji on Slack, ITG, I was like a bit confused what does it mean, but then after some time we really got used to it, and I will borrow that for sure for my next projects because it really works and it's a really nice approach.
Awesome.
Yeah, same for me. It was like first time, but it's definitely sticking. I'm taking it with me. Yeah, it was great type of work when we can quickly ship and we know that we'll get back to it and fix it and make it better with like every iteration. So
I think the key for me is like the sort of, when we say like ITG internally, it's kind of like a meme at this point. And The point is, here's a good example of it. The V0 mobile app is not like a one-to-one port of the website to native. It doesn't have every feature. It doesn't have some specific project setting or something like that, because that's not the point. The point is to give you a really fast native experience as an extension of this existing website. And so the ITG here is like, all right, we'll do those other features in the future, but like it doesn't mean we're going to like iterate towards a working keyboard necessarily. I mean, that is also kind of the thing. Like we're always finding improvements in the chat, but it's like there's certain things that you need to really, really nail, and then others that you can continually iterate on. And it's just very important to make sure you don't mess that up.
That's a great sentiment. I just feel that we've touched upon a few anecdotes from your work, from what you did. And as Fernando, as you said, you have this whole list of patches that you will probably open source in the future. So I'm hoping that for everything you open source, you can maybe attach an anecdote into the README, or maybe, pictures from app.js where you just huddled around a computer and you solved very, very tough issues with smart people. We have to wrap up. It's been great talking with you. I feel we could talk for a few more hours, but we should finish up. So it was great having you here. Thank you again, Szymon, Oskar, and Fernando, and have a great day.
Thank you.